a non-partisan group that empowers voters and defends democracy. We, as the Aurora Area League of Women Voters, are a young league. We just celebrated our 5th anniversary. But during those years, we have registered more than 1,000 voters. We've had numerous candidate forums, and our next forum is going to be October 7th. It'll be on Facebook Live. Just go to the League's Facebook page, and it's Representative Lauren Underwood and her opponent, James Martyr. So that's October 7th for our next candidate forum. We also do 3 programs a year, one in the fall, one in the winter, and one in the spring. So obviously this is our fall program. We are honored to have Rianne Hawkins with us tonight. She is the Senior Director of Public Policy and Advocacy for Planned Parenthood of Illinois and Planned Parenthood Illinois Action. She plans and coordinates efforts to motivate, educate, activate, and build support for Planned Parenthood and partner initiatives. Since joining Planned Parenthood in 2016, Rianne has been involved with efforts to pass reproductive health care initiatives, including the passage of the Reproductive Health Care Act in Illinois, the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment in Illinois, and the Keeping Youth Safe and Health Act. And she says humbly that all of these pieces of legislation were done in coordination with several grassroots groups throughout the state. So she is a very, very busy woman, and we are honored that she is with us tonight. Rianne.
Good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, good. And I should point out, one of those grassroots organizations is the League of Women Voters of Illinois. So thank you all so much for your partnership and advocacy on behalf of Planned Parenthood and all of our initiatives statewide. We really could not do what we do in the Capitol and throughout the state without the help of league chapters throughout the state, including this one here in Aurora. And just selfishly, I helped establish the League of Women Voters chapter in Springfield, Illinois. I'm no longer the president, obviously, because as you heard, I have a very big job, unfortunately. But my mother runs the voter registration for the League of Women Voters in Springfield. So you all have a very special place in my heart because my mom is still very, very active in the league.
Becky Simon, who's president of the Illinois League, is here.
Yes, hi Becky, I saw you earlier. I didn't know if you remembered me or not, but that's been a couple of years ago. So I'm so happy to be with you all here tonight. I work for Planned Parenthood of Illinois and Planned Parenthood Illinois Action. Planned Parenthood of Illinois operates the Aurora Health Clinic, which I'm sure you are all familiar with, just down on New York. And I can't think of a more important time than this to ensure that we are paying attention to who our pro-choice champions are at all levels of government, especially here in Aurora. We know that each election has consequences, and while the urgency may ebb and flow depending on who is on the ballot and what issue is the hot topic for the day, we know that this year has to be about reproductive rights and the importance of ensuring that reproductive rights are safeguarded moving forward. I don't need to tell you all, but in June of 2022, the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade with the Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health decision. And what that did is it put the issue of reproductive rights in the hands of state legislatures throughout the country. Almost immediately, states throughout the country instituted more strict abortion bans. It was almost like they were a race to the bottom for many of them on who could enact the more strict bans. So we're seeing that in states like Texas, Idaho, Georgia, Florida. All of those states are caught up in some kind of legal action. So for example, just yesterday, there was a legal action taken in Florida that reversed a ban that the state legislature had put into place. Needless to say, this all causes a lot of confusion for patients, whether or not they can access care. And underlying Roe is that right to privacy. And in his majority opinion, Justice Thomas made it clear that stopping at reproductive rights is not something that is he thinks is necessary. He opened up the possibility to revisit other Supreme Court decisions, including the right, Bergefeld, which is the right to for you to marry anyone that you love. So this anti-choice extremist politicians, including those that serve on our U.S. Supreme Court, have made their intentions very, very clear to us, and that's why every single election matters. I just want to rewind the clock just a little bit and talk about what we've achieved here in Illinois. So, as was mentioned earlier, I joined Planned Parenthood in 2016, in May of 2016. It was a very different time. I thought I was joining a pro-women's rights organization just at the point of time where we were going to elect our first female president. A very exciting time. I had just given birth to my son. And so it was just a confluence of a lot of things that came to be at that time. Of course, we know that didn't happen. But using the momentum of the outrage in the wake of our former president's election helped us really supercharged the efforts to make Illinois a haven state. So that started in 2017 with the passage of a bill called HB 40, which repealed, the headliner of that bill was repealing a trigger provision that we had in Illinois state law that said that Illinois would turn into an anti-choice state should Roe v. Wade ever be overturned. And in 2017, that seemed like an absolute impossibility. I think I was laughed out of many legislators' offices by warning that this could happen. Thank goodness that we got that bill passed and it was signed into law. We followed that up in 2019 with the passage of the Reproductive Health Act, which said, among other things, that abortion care is a fundamental right here in the state of Illinois. It's one of the strongest protections throughout the country that we have for reproductive rights are here in Illinois. And we did that in close coordination, communication, partnership, field work, all kinds of things. Boy, do I have stories about passing the Reproductive Health Act in 2019. I really think, just for me personally and selfishly, it's one of the highlights of my career is passing that piece of legislation. And then we haven't stopped since then, looking for more and more ways that we can cement Illinois as a haven state has been my work for the last 7 years or so. And we've done that with you all's help because we can't do it without the help from grassroots activists throughout the state of Illinois. Now we get to 2022. And while we are passing all this great legislation, we're cementing Illinois as a haven state. On the other side of our business for Planned Parenthood of Illinois, which is our entity that operates 18 health centers throughout the state of Illinois, we were making plans for the overturning of Roe versus Wade and what that would mean for patients seeking abortion care and coming to Illinois. We provided the foundation. Our med services staff provided the structure to be able to serve all the patients that we knew were going to come. So that's why we opened up health centers, or Planned Parenthood of Illinois opened up health centers in Flossmoor. We expanded care in Champaign. We opened up a health center in Waukegan. And just last January, we opened up a health center in Carbondale. All of those were done strategically so that we could serve the needs of people traveling from all across the country that we knew would be coming to seek abortion care and gender-affirming care. And boy, did they ever come. When the Roe decision fell in June of 2022, in those 2 years since then, we've seen a 41% increase in our out-of-state patients coming here to Illinois to seek care. Most of those patients are coming from states like Indiana, Wisconsin, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, Kentucky. Now just think about that for a second. You're someone who needs care. You can't get it in your neighborhood or even in the next town over. Maybe you work a job that lets you have limited hours off. Maybe childcare is a concern. These people are coming all the way and driving overnight, multiple days, to come to Illinois to get the care that they should be receiving in their own states. And we are proud and happy to offer that care. but it is a journey for some people to get to here to Illinois. And that's why we're so thankful for our partners at places like the Chicago Abortion Fund, who work with patients and connect them with wraparound services. So help with gas money, help with childcare, help with food, help with hotel stays if need be, and help with actually affording the procedure if need be as well. I will say all of this has been going on for 2 years. All of this work has taken a toll on all of us. And I just want to highlight for you all that abortion funds are in real need of help. You know, being able to provide this type of care doesn't stop, and they operate on private donations, and those private donations are starting to dry up. And so I would encourage, if you're looking for a takeaway from my speech tonight, look up an organization like the Chicago Abortion Fund, like some of the other abortion funds that are helping patients throughout the country to seek care, and do what you can to help them, because they're doing great work to connect patients throughout the country to services, especially here in Illinois. Let me see what else. Here. In addition to just facing the barriers to get into the state, patients are also facing barriers when they get here, for example, here to Aurora to seek care. How many of you know, have you been by the Planned Parenthood here in Aurora? Okay, so you know there's a crisis pregnancy center literally right across the street. Protest activity has really ramped up around our Aurora Health Center, and it can potentially be dangerous at some times. We're talking about people trying to block cars, people trying to wave people into the crisis pregnancy center parking lot instead of our parking lot. So if patients are facing yelling, threats of physical harm, and just basic disinformation all the time when they're trying to make their way to Illinois to seek care. And it's not just happening in Aurora, it's happening throughout the state. So it's a targeted campaign to divert patients from getting the care that they need, and it's multi-pronged. So in addition to the financial barriers and the transportation costs and the childcare and everything, add this on top of it, it's a lot to bear for what should just be routine health care. So all that is to say, there's a lot of work ahead. Our work never ends. If there's one thing that I've learned at working for Planned Parenthood for the last 8 years, it's that our job is never done. There's always another hill to climb. There's always another battle to fight to make sure that people have access to the reproductive health care that they need. So I'm going to leave you with 4 things that you can do to help. Number 1, and Donna's going to do a little bit of this here in a second, but share your story. 1 in 4 women have had abortion care. It's important that we share stories and talk about this to destigmatize abortion care, and that it's part of routine health care and should be accessible to everyone. Volunteer. We definitely need volunteers, especially here in Aurora. If you're interested in volunteering, please don't hesitate to come up and see me after the event tonight. We could definitely use your help, especially with being clinic escorts. Those are friendly faces and welcoming faces that patients see when they are seeking care at a Planned Parenthood Health Center. It's very rewarding work, but it can also be very trying too, but we need as much help as we can in the clinic escort area. Obviously, I just mentioned the desire to donate. I would be remiss if I didn't also mention donating to Planned Parenthood as well, so that we can continue to offer this care. We are a nonprofit, but also definitely look at abortion funds as well. They are in absolute need of support and help. And the one thing that I'll just leave you with is make sure that when you go to choose candidates to vote for, that you make sure you know where they stand on the issues around reproductive rights. More and more we are seeing issues around reproductive rights go from the national level to the state level, and now we're seeing it at the local level too. So just this last spring, we saw 2 local initiatives in the towns of Danville and Quincy, where local anti-choice activists tried to get the city councils to declare those 2 towns sanctuary cities for the unborn. And it was a massive fight at both of those local levels. In one town, they rejected it. In one town, it's in kind of legal limbo. But it's indicative to me that this fight is starting to go local. So it's going to be in your local city councils, it's going to be at your local county boards. And I would just recommend to you all to educate yourself and to know the ways that people can take local action to restrict access to abortion care, and make sure that we make sure that politicians who have that as part of their agenda are not elected. And I know the League of Women Voters has reproductive rights as one of the key planks in our policy agenda, so it's one place where we work very closely on, and I'm very excited to continue that work with you all. I blew through that really fast. I'm hoping that we can make this a conversation though, and I'm happy to take any questions. Yeah?
What is the primary reason funds are drying up? Are you talking about government funds or private?
No, private. So the question was the primary reason that funds are drying up. I think that, I can't say for sure, but I think the attention on abortion funds may have waned in the last couple of years, right? Like there was a surge right after the Roe decision fell, and people really paid attention to the needs of other people. The needs don't end, but people's attention gets diverted. So yeah, I think if I would have to guess, I would have to say that would be the reason why. Yeah.
So if it's a sanctuary city for the unborn, to protect the unborn, if there's a hospital in that city and the woman needs a DNC or that care, can they actually stop that from happening in the hospitals?
So 2 things. The question is about hospitals in local communities where, and keep in mind, it's just in one city right now, and it's in legal limbo, and whether or not that can be enforced. And obviously, should it try to be enforced, I think our partners at the ACLU would have some words with that particular municipality. 2 things. Number 1, we have in the state of Illinois a Right of Conscience Act. So that says that hospitals that are religiously affiliated do not have to offer the care that is not incongruent with their beliefs. So specifically Catholic hospitals do not have to offer that care. Now they do have to refer people to get the care that they need. But in a place like Western Illinois, for example, that is covered by a Catholic hospital system, St. Francis, it's not easy to go to the next town over. I think virtually all of Western Illinois is covered by a Catholic hospital system. It severely restricts care. And then the second thing I'll just say is that, this legal limbo, the Reproductive Health Act preempts any local laws, but it doesn't stop villages and towns from trying to pass this. And so it's questionable whether or not it can be enforced. In the Danville situation, they added an amendment last minute that puts it in a legal gray area. And so it's not actively being enforced because it hasn't taken effect yet, because they found an amendment that puts it in this gray area. But that doesn't stop local anti-choice politicians from trying to pass this at the local level and creating a very volatile situation at local city halls, county boards, etc. Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to say, when Quincy tried to make itself a sanctuary city for the unborn, the local League of Women Voters, League of Women Voters of Adams County, was represented by President Rianne Klein. And she made public comment against the proclamation. And she had direct confrontations with members of her own church congregation in that. But League of Women Voters stood up for women's right to choose.
Quincy.
I listened to that whole debate. That was a very long evening. There were a lot of coalition partners, so thank you to the Quincy League. That was very helpful.
Can you repeat what she said for you too?
Sure. Becky just mentioned that when the fight around the sanctuary city ordinance in Quincy was happening, the Quincy League of Women Voters was instrumental in making sure that their voice was added to the debate to stop that from passing. And unfortunately, that league president ended up having some personal conflicts in their personal church around those public statements that were made. So it can get hairy, but thank you to her and to the rest of the league members for standing up for the right to choose and for reproductive rights in the city of Quincy. Very impactful.
So kind of going along with what Becky just said, my question was about, do you have any talking points for when you're talking to someone who's maybe kind of like it's their tradition or just their knee-jerk habit to say that they're pro-life, but maybe they can't think of really good reasons. I'm not talking about those who are like diehard,
Sure.
but maybe just who like to say that they are, but maybe what are some good talking points?
Yeah, so the question is talking points for people that are saying that they're pro-life. So number one, I would say this is a very divisive issue, as you can imagine. We at Planned Parenthood have a strict non-engagement policy, so I don't try to change people's minds that are pretty set in their ways. I think that is not a productive use of time. However, people, I've found that it's government interference in healthcare is the problem. This is enacting abortion bans is the government telling people what healthcare they can receive and when. It doesn't mean that that's the choice that you have to make. Absolutely everyone should have the freedom to make the choice that is right for them in consultation with their doctor, their partner, and a religious figure if that is your choice. But to take that choice away from someone else is an overreach and an overstep. And that usually is helpful to get people to look at it in those terms instead of in the other way that is not helpful.
So I donate to Planned Parenthood. So
Thank
where
you.
does my donation go? How is that money spent?
Do you donate to Planned Parenthood of Illinois or Planned Parenthood Federation?
I think it's national.
Okay, so she asked where her money goes. So we have two sides at Planned Parenthood. There's Planned Parenthood of Illinois and the Planned Parenthood Federation of America. The Planned Parenthood of Illinois operates 18 health centers throughout the state of Illinois. So we've got health centers from Waukegan to Carbondale, from Peoria to Champaign, and 7 in the city of Chicago alone. We are in neighborhoods, we are offering healthcare. So donations to Planned Parenthood of Illinois goes to operate the health centers and make sure that people get the care that they need. When you donate to an entity like Planned Parenthood Action Fund or Planned Parenthood Illinois Action, you're donating to political and advocacy work that supports electing and then holding accountable elected officials to make sure that there are laws and regulations enacted so that those health centers can operate. So I like to think of us, because I run the policy shop, I'm partial to this. I provide the climate that lets the health center operate in the neighborhood.
There's some stories out there about some states that have very strict laws that a woman can be arrested if she tries to leave the state to seek health care. Is that just fiction or has that happened?
That is a law. She asked about laws that have been enacted that would arrest or subject people to arrest if they left the state to receive health care. That is laws that have been passed in the state of Texas and Tennessee. There are even laws going so far in the state of Texas as to local municipalities making it illegal to travel on the locally owned roads to receive healthcare. So, if you drive down State Route 15 instead of US Highway 15, you could be arrested by the local authorities if they knew that you were seeking healthcare. Now, how those are enforced, I have no idea, but they exist. And so other states see those and copy them. There was just a law passed in Tennessee, I think it's caught up in the courts now though, that would make it illegal for anyone to transport a minor to a Haven state to receive gender affirming care. So we're seeing the same playbook that was used to criminalize abortion in some of these states now being applied to gender affirming care. And especially with youth, this care can be life-saving for them, so that they can receive the treatment that they need. And states like Tennessee are attempting to criminalize adults for taking your child to get the healthcare that they need in order to survive. So it's, there is no limit to the creativeness of people to restrict other people from receiving healthcare. It doesn't stop at the state legislature. There are very creative things that are being come up with. Yeah.
When you say in order to survive in that case, are you referring to suicide?
Yes, absolutely. Suicide, self-harm, especially in youth that are struggling with and need help, being able to get the help, the mental health care that they need or the support that they need in order to get that gender affirming care. Suicide is definitely a real possibility. It's life-saving for some of these people and necessary. And, I just couldn't imagine not being able to take my son or my daughter for that matter. I have a daughter as well. A doctor tells me that I need to get this for my child and I could be criminalized for seeking out the health care that my child needs in order to live their best life. I just can't even imagine. Yeah.
I really have a problem with, and I've heard these horror stories, so I know they're true. I am a retired nurse, went to a Catholic hospital, and used to be and I know they refer to what you used to call a miscarriage is now referred to as an abortion. And many times when you have a miscarriage, all the products of conception are not expelled.
Mm-hmm.
So D&C is what you have to have or you run into big problems. So you said that this would be at Quincy, I think was the city you were talking about. So are the Catholic hospitals in Western Illinois now saying if someone comes in Quincy, that's the only town that's so far. If a woman comes in and is in need of a D&C, that they are not going to provide her with this health care?
So, sorry, go ahead.
Well, and apparently this has happened in other states because of the doctors fearing that they're going to be prosecuted. And I'm like, I just can't fathom that.
Yeah. So first off, the city where the sanctuary city for the unborn ordinance is in this legal limbo. It's not, enacted and it's not, struck down either. It's actually Danville, not Quincy. But to your point, we have a law here in the state of Illinois that's the right of conscience law. So it says that hospitals and providers don't have to give care that is inconsistent with their own personally held beliefs. Now, what those personally held beliefs are, can be a spectrum, right? And, I think it also depends on the hospital policy, for example, as well, can vary as well. But while they don't have to provide that care, they do have to refer for that care. So if a doctor is faced with the situation that you're talking about, and they're practicing at a hospital that doesn't allow it, or maybe they personally don't have a belief that allows them to perform that procedure, they do have to refer the patient to a facility that does. So the patient, in theory, could still get care. But in areas like Western Illinois, I'm thinking like Macomb, Galesburg, Peoria, where it's an hour from town to town.
Oh, no, I'm very
Yeah,
familiar with that
exactly.
area.
It can't be easy to just hop over to the next hospital.
And I would really like to have a list of these doctors published, because to me, this is kind of like, you go to the hospital and they tell you you have an acute appendix. But the surgeon says, oh, but I can't do anything about it until it ruptures, because it's still an intact appendix. That's not good medicine.
I'm not a doctor, so I can't speak to, specific situations. What I can tell you is that this is the law in the state of Illinois, is that doctors and medical facilities that have personally held beliefs against providing that care are not required to do so, but they are required to refer for it. Yeah.
I was wondering if Planned Parenthood employs lobbyists, and whether or not there are published legislative platforms or policies that are used by lobbyists, if there are, or other interested parties.
Well, you're looking at one. I'm a Planned Parenthood lobbyist, have been for 8 years. We do have a lobbying team that does represent Planned Parenthood of Illinois, health centers, and our advocacy arm, Planned Parenthood Illinois Action. And we do publish our legislative platform each spring before session. Yeah, that's available on our website usually. Yeah.
Well, Rianne, we want to thank you very, very, very much. And while we are applauding, I want to thank Centauri Library, and especially Allie, who has worked with us every single program and has done an outstanding job. So thank you. Now we're going to hear from a very, very brave woman, Donna Griffin-Lego. She has already spoken publicly about this twice. I've heard her one time, so that's why I asked her to come tonight. She said women in her age group who were young before Roe v. Wade had a very different experience. And it's time for them to start speaking out. And so she's here tonight to share her story. Thank you, Donna.
Thanks, Donna. This is on? Yeah. Good. I want to just say, I thought you did a really fabulous job. And if you need anybody up here to stand in front of a building and say nice things to people, I'm your girl. So, anyway, what I wanted to talk about was my personal experience. But I'm starting off with kind of a side thing for a second. Those who don't know their history are condemned to repeat it. And that is what is happening today with these laws that are being passed all over. Does anybody here know when abortion became illegal in the country? 1860s. And it was illegal until 1973, when Roe v. Wade was passed. So that was what, 110 years? Before that, it wasn't illegal at all. Women had to, figure out ways to do it, and doctors weren't prosecuted. There was no crime in it before the 1860s. So that was just a little factoid I found. What I realized one night, and it's like one of those things where you're driving your car and all of a sudden a golf ball hits you in the head. It was right around the time that the veterans were being applauded in France for the World War II celebration. And these gentlemen, mostly gentlemen, I guess they're all gentlemen, were in their 90s. And the big deal was made about the fact that they were all passing away, and they are very quickly every day. There are fewer and fewer of them. But it occurred to me at that particular time that women who had to have illegal abortions are passing away. I'm 76 years old. I had my abortion 2 years before Roe v. Wade was passed. So there were not quite so many women after me getting illegal abortions as there were before me. Thousands of them. And they're passing away too. I'm 76, and they're older than I am. They're in their 80s, they're in their 90s, and their stories have never been told. They couldn't talk about it to their families. They couldn't talk about it to their friends. They kept us hidden. It was a shameful thing to do for decades. So what I would like to do is put stories together about what it was like, not just for me, but for anybody who will tell me their story. And that way we'll have on record how difficult it was, what a difficult, crazy time that was. So now I'll try to get back to the point here. I'm trying to do a project, I'm calling it Desperate Decisions. And I just want to give you a history of that period of time. 1969, I was 21 years old. I had just gotten a job downtown. I was working as a secretary, so I wasn't making tons of money, and I had an apartment that I had to move into, and so I was a little shy of cash at that point. But I got a really good job, and I was really looking forward to it. My career was taking off great. And then I dated a guy, and we went out to eat one night. I'm not a big drinker, and Lord only knows what made me do it. But, you know, we played around on the floor in my living room. And no, it wasn't Andy. He says it's not me. So we had kind of a good time that night, but I had to tell him in a couple of weeks, I said, look, we got a problem here. So I started thinking about, okay, what are the decisions I have to make? All right. The pill problem, okay? I've had people say, well, why didn't you use the pill? Because the pill really wasn't available at that period of time. It had just been introduced in the 60s. It was still being tested all over the place. It had all kinds of side effects. And, you know, women were afraid to use it because they were getting blood clots, and it was just a terrible time. So in 1969, you couldn't find a safe pill, something that was totally safe. Another thing about that period of time was, if you had to get it as a prescription. You had to go to a doctor to get the prescription, and they only gave it to married women. So there you go. That's kind of had to get checked off my list. Then you have the problem of the shame. What was I going to do if I carried the baby to term? I would have to move back with my parents. And I was sure they would be supportive, but you know, I was a good Catholic girl, and good Catholic girls really didn't want to bring that kind of shame on their good Catholic families. In addition to the fact that I had 4 younger siblings, and my grandmother lived with them, and they had just a normal inner city bungalow type house. And for me to come back into the house with a baby on my back or in a basket, you know, that wasn't going to work terribly well. So moving home, that wasn't going to work for me. Then you had the problem about the job. Okay, so here I have this great job, wonderful job. When you started to show that you were pregnant back then, they fired you because they didn't want pregnant women cluttering up their sleek offices. And I worked in an advertising agency on Michigan Avenue. So I would have been fired. And then once you got fired, you had no health insurance to help you pay for prenatal care, to help you pay for delivering the baby, okay? So I had to scratch that off my list. And then even if I conquered all of that and I got to the point where I needed somebody to take care of my child, first of all, my mother and grandmother could have done it, but then I would have had to give up the job and I would be living back out near the suburbs and, you know, I just didn't, I couldn't do that to my family, I'm sorry. So, there were no child care services available downtown at that point in time. And even if there were, they did not accept infants. If your kid wasn't out of diapers, or if it wasn't potty trained, there was no care for children. Okay? So there was no way I was going to be able to do that out there. So that kind of set me up to the next set of options that I had. The next set of options were a knitting needle, a crochet hook, a wire coat hanger, or throwing myself down a flight of stairs. That's what women did when they were desperate, because your society did not help you in any way, shape, or form. And if you tried any of those methods, possible outcomes were bleeding to death, sepsis, loss of ability to have children in the future, and failure to abort, which puts you right back in the same situation you're trying to get out of. So here at the bottom, I have my one remaining option. Oh, shoot. Florida, it's either my ex-husband or my ex-husband. I know who lives there. Anyway, so okay, so my one remaining option, and that of course was abortion, illegal, because there was no legal abortion. So I called up the father of this incumbent child and said, I need some help over here. Do you know anybody that can do an abortion? Can you find a name for me? So actually he agreed. And he did come up with a solution. And he did come up with some money. So I was going to get charged $400 for a back alley abortion. And he came up with 300 of it. And I emptied my savings account, the other 100. And set off into the night. Oh, and by the way, $400 in those days is $3,500 in today's dollars. So just coming up with part of it was all I had. So I was given directions after work. I got on an L train. This was November. It was already dark at dinner time. It was very cold. I sat on this L train going to put my life in the hands of a person that I did not know, a person I could not prove was even a doctor. I had no money to get home, and you know, anything could happen. I just rode the L train and cried a lot, I guess. I still cry when I think about that. So I was told to get off the L train at a particular stop and wait on the corner and somebody would pick me up, which I did. I waited on the corner for over an hour. These people had to be very careful. I'm sure they were trying to make sure that I was not a cop. So I waited for an hour in the cold. There was a little cigarette shop open, so I would go in and out of it just so he knew I was out there and I wasn't going to get killed on the street corner or something. It was the south side of Chicago, and things were not always so cool there. So eventually a woman drives up in a car. She asked if I was Donna. Yes, get in the car, get in the car. She takes me to this literally back alley portion in a motel. Takes me in, and I can still remember the layout of that room. walked in the door, there's a double bed going this way in the room. The doctor asked me to lay down on the bed crosswise. And as I lay there, listening to an edition of Jacques Cousteau's Undersea Adventures, it was the one about a whale. I've never been able to watch a Jacques Cousteau movie, but I can just, I'm laying on the bed. This was the wall, it's the head of the bed. Next to that was the closet. In front of me was the door we came in. Over here was the television set, and behind my head was the bathroom. And everything in the place looked brown. I don't know why, but anyway. So he performed the abortion. He must have given me something to relax me, or maybe a painkiller. I'm not sure what it was. I fell asleep. And after, I have no idea, maybe an hour, he woke me up and he said, "It's time to go. I've called a cab for you." So I said, "I don't have any money for a cab." So he went out and paid the cab driver to take me home. And I didn't even tell my roommate. I just was sick for a couple of days, took a couple of days off work. It was very painful. And then I just went on with my life. I never did tell my parents. I have told my children and my husband. But it was a scary, scary night. And why do we have to put women through stuff like that? Stuff like that. I had no options. There are some options now. I mean, the child care is better, if you want to carry it to term. But the thought of giving the baby up wasn't in me. I couldn't do that. You read in the papers all the time about the child services and how they lost kids in the system and how kids were put in abusive homes, and there was no possible way I could do that. So I am here to say that we're doing it all over again. And it has to stop. It just has to stop. I will tell my story to anybody in the world. What I really want to do is collect other stories. If you know of anyone, and if you're over 76, you might know of someone who had an illegal abortion, I would love to hear their story. I'm trying to be very careful about it. My husband and I purchased a burner phone yesterday so that if people had to contact me, they couldn't be traced. I really don't want it written in an email. I don't want it on my cell phone records. I will use that phone for this purpose because a lot of people are very wary. Things are not going easy on the streets, as you mentioned. Okay, and so I'm trying to make it safe to come forward. And if you can think of any other things I could do to make it safe to come forward, I would do them. But what I'm also trying to do is I've applied to StoryCorps in Washington, which is run through the archive system there, where you can tell stories. And I've applied there, and yes, they confirmed I got my application, and I haven't heard a thing for 4 months, so I don't know whose butt I have to kick to get moving on that. And I just want to get it out there that even if they have another law, even if we can get another law passed that makes abortions legal, I want to put it on the record. I want to have it in an archive so that anybody that wants information on what it was like will be able to find out, and our stories will come out. Decades we waited. So I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Anybody have any questions? I should have brought a box of Kleenex. I didn't realize.
I have a question. Did you have any follow-up care after
Oh,
abortion?
no,
I didn't
I
think so.
laid on the sofa in my living room and just told my partner that I was having cramps, which I was, but not for the reason she thought. No. I was 21. I was very naive. I'd never seen a gynecologist in my life. I didn't know where to find one downtown. I mean, I was 2 blocks from a hospital, but that did not occur to me. So, no, I never had follow-up care. And I've had 3 lovely children, so it didn't affect me badly.
Well, Donna, we appreciate you having the courage to share your story. The other Donna, did you have a question?
I just have a comment, actually. I find it very interesting that one of the first things that you mentioned about your story and your inability to proceed with, carrying it to term was shame. And not just your own shame, but the shame that you felt you would bring on your family. And I think that is a major presence for young women that find themselves in this situation. It's not so much the situation they're in, but the situation that they believe they put their families in. And where does that sentiment come from? And one of the things that I find in raising my own children, my son in particular, was that I paid very close attention to how I raised him, because I don't think that all of these religious, organizations and zealots that are supposedly pro-choice even put any emphasis on training the male counterparts to take precautions and, to step up when something like this happens. And it's all about the shame. Why do we still have that shame hanging over everyone's head?
For the benefit of our YouTube audience, I'll say, I may not have heard, she said that we shouldn't have the shame hanging over everybody's head, and the men have to step up and take responsibility too, not just the women.
And not just the men, but the organizations that are promoting pro-choice and anti-choice. Where's the training? They really we need to tell them, step up and train the men, train the families to teach differently. Because if it's just hidden away and never talked about in the homes, it's just putting the burden on that young woman who has no skills and no resources. And that's the shame right there.
All right, thank you very, very much, Donna. I hope that was picked up by YouTube, maybe, yes. You will notice on your chair, there's an evaluation form. The library has really done amazing work. This used to be a whole page and now it's just a postcard. So you can do this very quickly. It helps them a lot with their future programming. I know everybody here is anxious to get home because there's a program on at 8 o'clock. I think it's a debate, I don't know. So, and Rianne has to drive all the way to Springfield tonight. So let's thank her again for covering this far.
Can I add just one thing?
Sure.
I have some business cards here. And if any of you think you might know of another organization that I could speak to, or if you know somebody that may have gone through a similar problem period, I would love for you to take a card and have them get in touch with me, or for you.